After over 5 years, we now bring you the second video interview with James Casbolt. In Bases 4, Casbolt expanded on Barry King's material, first released in Bases 1 and 2. King talked about generated life forms, horrendous mind and population control programs, Mannequin and Puppet Master, all going on in Britain's Berkshire countryside at a base under the village of Peasmore. Casbolt highlighted even more horrific programs involving children, genetic experimentation and further terrifying details. And even a base under Parliament itself called CLC-1. In Bases 2 and 4, a further witness, Matt Todd, gave us even more detail with the involvement of the US military in the abductions, or MILABs, and how he killed 4 Greys at a base where people's souls were kept in cages. Bases 7 gave us super soldier Dave Marrow and his trauma-induced monarch programming. Selected at birth and trained to fight off-planet perhaps, Matt Todd demonstrated radio signals coming from his many implants, the existence of some other form of dimensional reality, and a war with super beings is implied. So now, in Bases 9, we present Michael Prince, A.K.A. James Casbolt. This time, the SS comes into focus and the nightmare continues. That is, if any of these claims can ever be proved with factual, evidential data. James Casbolt.
James, we met in a previous persona as James on previous edition of the Basis series. You've got a different persona now, or you've got 2 different ways you portray yourself to the public. Can you explain what the difference is, or why you've changed, or has there been a change? Michael Prince, James Casbolt.
It's just a simple matter of I'm using the name, my birth name, Michael Prince.
Right.
That's the name I was given at birth by my biological mother.
So where's the story of the Casbolt? What's the story?
That was a family I was adopted into, the Casbolt family.
Yeah.
So that was 81. Yeah, I need to go back to the beginning when I was a baby, the origins of Project Ibis.
Right.
It was the name of the project I was involved in, born into, effectively, was named Project Ibis, and it was run by the NSA and MI6. And it was tracking of 42 children from different countries. And all those children were brought to a facility in Canada in the Rocky Mountains, underneath a small town called Nelson. And
what countries? Why were they selected?
According to the file information that I've seen, they were selected for because their DNA. The NSA information that I've seen says that we have what they call blood prime, which it states Anunnaki DNA.
What is blood prime? What specifically are the differences?
I think it's a type of alien DNA, human, alien, hybrid.
Is there any particular rhesus negative, positive, or anything like that?
I think there's the rhesus negative factor in it. I think that the O negative factor.
So how are the children selected as such? I mean, does that mean there's some means of selecting? Is it from different, at birth, other people's bloodline, medical records?
I think the mothers were selected, and the embryos were cloned embryos grown in an artificial environment, test tube babies. And I think those, from my understanding, those embryos were then implanted into specific women who gave birth, and then at the time of birth the children were transported to the underground facility in Nelson in Canada. The name of that facility was a Q552.
Where's Nelson? Is it in Manitoba, Winnipeg, somewhere?
That's a small town in the Rocky Mountains. It's in British Columbia, in Canada. So we were all taken there at the time of birth. Some from America, I think. There was some from South America, obviously some from the UK. I don't know who the other 42 children are. I've got a rough idea now.
Why 42?
I don't know.
Is it just that's what the sample was? There's no significance in it?
I don't know. I'm sure there's significance in it somewhere, but I don't have that information. Many of the children were transported on private CIA jets, small charter jets.
Or just
like Learjets.
Yeah.
And transported there.
So what's the program? What specifically is the purpose of it? There's a lot of effort being put into this then. Why?
Project Ibis, it's again the Nazi connection. The name comes from the Giza intelligence group underneath the Giza pyramids, the Nazi group in World War II.
What Nazi group is this?
It's known as the Giza intelligence, the Nazi group.
And which part of the Giza plateau were they involved with?
I don't know. I just know they were based underneath the Giza pyramids. There was a facility, the Nazis in World War II, and the name connects to Thoth, the immortal, and the Egyptian. His some connection with an ibis bird would represent Thoth in Egypt.
And what were they trying to find in Egypt, or what did they find in Egypt?
I think they found some kind of life extension technology. And this was effectively this was a major part of the IBIS program, was life extension, regeneration.
Is there some kind of chamber that you could mention, or any particular area?
Yeah, there's the emerald chambers.
The emerald?
Or the emerald rooms. But I think that's in more than one location. I'd rather not talk too much about the emerald rooms. I'd rather just focus. Because it's such a complex subject. It's
Is this to do with the storage of souls on the earth and the recreation on earth?
This is very much physical. This is at the Q552 we were being indoctrinated with Nazi principles, Germanic principles.
Were you indoctrinated by Nazis?
Yeah, it was Nazi. It wasn't just Nazis there, but there was a big Nazi presence. Some of the philosophies were indoctrinated with there. You see those philosophies in Germanic organisations to this day, like the Odinist Fellowship in this country. The philosophies are based around, obviously, the creation of an Uberman, a Superman. But they see life on Earth as a means to an end. They're not trying to get somewhere else. They're not trying to get to heaven or another planet. They want to become physically immortal in this body, on this earth, and stay here. Now, we're also indoctrinated with the Germanic belief in endless warfare. That would be our reality. Once we stayed here physically, our reality would be endless warfare, and there'd be periods of rest.
Purely to maybe reorganise the logistics, or?
They talked about the 1,000-year Reich, the 1,000 years of peace, which would be periods of rest in between the warfare, and then it would just be a continuous cycle. And that was effectively how they'd indoctrinated us to be assassins when we were older, so we could keep functioning. If we were concerned about the next hit and had anxiety about that, we wouldn't be able to carry it out and function. But if in our mindset, if we believed that we were designed for endless warfare and it would never stop, we would just accept that and be relaxed when we were involved in assassination.
And what kind of assassinations or what kind of missions are we talking about here?
This is in numerous countries, many different ways.
So is it? I mean, are we sort of going and doing a 1, 2, 3 bump somebody off, or just that different types of assassination?
A lot of it was standard gunplay. I mean, that came later on down the road. Obviously, we were actually raised in this facility as babies. So from 1976 to 1979, we were raised in this base. where it was in the mountains, it was underground, but it was above ground, the main entrance. It was like an aircraft hangar. And
what kind of general area are we talking about? What can you describe any of the buildings?
It's in the mountains. It's a very private location near Nelson, just near Nelson in the mountains.
Would there be a mountain name you could name?
It's near, I think it could, I'm not sure the mountain name. I know that there's a logging compound nearby, and there's an old access route near the logging compound that actually takes you to the base in the mountain. And Nelson's a very small town. Again, the above ground section of it was an aircraft hangar, and when we were first brought there as babies,
is it got a runway and landing place, or?
It's fenced off, high fences, and it has a runway in front of the aircraft hangar as you come in, but the aircraft hangar is sort of fenced around. The runway's here and the aircraft hangar's here.
Yeah,
it's quite a big building. But as babies, we slept in the aircraft hangar often because it was essentially a trauma centre. So they wanted us to be exposed to the cold, and there was sets of cots in there.
So this is high up, maybe it's a couple of thousand feet up.
High over the Rocky Mountains, yeah. Very high. It's near Banff National Park.
Right.
So we were kind of being exposed to the elements, essentially. We slept there in the aircraft hangar with the doors open, and there was rows of cots, and we were under 24-hour armed guard at all times, so we couldn't be rescued from that facility because there were factions there that would rescue us at the first opportunity. The people that,
like the parents or the
special forces groups. The people that guarded us they wore black uniforms, and they wore black masks, but sometimes they wore the ultra-modern SS uniform.
What's that?
It's kind of like your standard SAS Black Ops uniform. Black boots, black trousers, black top, but it has chest plates and there's leather around the arms, and it has the SS double rune on the chest. The SS symbol, and
so that's a modern uniform. When you're saying a modern uniform, you're talking about post World War II.
Yeah, this is the modern SS uniform. Yeah.
So getting back to this SS uniform, I think, what era are we talking about? 70s?
This was 1976, and we were first taken there as babies.
So that means that that's the SS wearing those uniforms in Canada. So they must have authority to do so.
There was some kind of internal war going on in the military and in the intelligence community.
So are you saying this is therefore a Nazi organisation that's doing this?
Yeah.
So by inference, it means that the connections with AL499 and the other places in the UK must be essentially under Nazi control, or is that NSA control?
Well, this is it, you see. There's a big Nazi element within the NSA, because this was officially an NSA facility, the Q552 at Nelson. This was a NSA base, officially, the Q552 facility at Nelson. Now, there's a major Nazi element within the NSA.
So that essentially is saying that the NSA is a Nazi organisation and a survivor organisation from World War II?
Yeah, I'd say that's a fairly accurate statement.
So de facto, World War II was won by the Nazis?
I wouldn't say they won, but I wouldn't say they lost either.
It survived.
It survived. Yeah, in an underground fashion.
if the NSA is essentially protecting the Nazis, or the Nazis are running the NSA,
Yeah.
is that what you're saying?
I'd say that this faction is running MI6. Just to go off topic slightly before I carry on about what happened at the Q552, my main contact in MI6, he's a director of special operations, a man named Alfred Bonner.
Is this your current contact, or was your contact?
He's been my contact for years, and he's my current contact. I've carried out many assassinations under his instructions.
So you're saying this publicly? Is this?
He's not publicly known, but people can contact MI6 and ask to speak to Director Bonner. You can contact MI6 on the website and the phone number, and MI6 will admit they do have a Director Bonner there.
So what is the function of telling us about this now? Are they inviting people to ask those questions, or do they want that information out?
They want this information out. Alfred Bonner, he's from Bavaria. A German, effectively. You see him, very interesting looking man. Your classic Aryan giant. The guy's 6'6", looks about 52, huge guy, massive shoulders, very blonde hair, going almost white now because he's getting a bit older. Wears your classic MIB outfit, the fedora hat, that's his style of dress. Wears the fedora hat, black suit, piercing blue eyes, has a scar down his left side.
That's from the officer class, from fighting?
I'm not sure where he got the scar. This guy, amazing guy.
It's a characteristic of German upper class is to have a scar.
It's interesting.
From sword fighting.
It's interesting you say that. I didn't know that. Very interesting character. He from Bavaria, close friends with Henry Kissinger, Henry Kissinger also from Bavaria.
Who seems to have an amazing ability to stay young and healthy, relatively speaking.
Alfred Bonner was a director of security at DULCE at the time of the DULCE rescue.
Now there's been a book published by Pilkington, I think it is. I could stand correcting, saying the whole DULCE thing's a fraud.
No,
they've stuck bits on the mountains to make it look as if what's going on.
No, DULCE is real. DULCE is 100% there.
So, I mean, why do you think there'd be elements within MI5 publishing books saying this stuff's wrong and it's shadows and it's a fraud?
I'm not really interested in the whole...
It's in your recent book that's been published.
I'm not really interested in all that. I know DULCE's real. It's an important place for the New World Order. So,
what's the function of DULCE? I mean, we've heard of certain underground things in it, which were released in the late 70s. Is there anything new about it? Is it current?
I've got a friend in the CIA who works at Oak Ridge National Laboratories in Tennessee, and he often works down at DULCE. He sent me pictures of the first level. I've got colour photographs. And it's not really, the first level isn't high tech. It's kind of just a damp old base. It's a bit run down, the first level. Not what you'd expect to see at all. The old elevator shafts and things.
Are you able to provide those pictures at all?
Yeah, I can. I think they were released on Project Avalon a couple of years back.
Right.
I can show you those pictures. But when you go down the levels, it does get more advanced down there. It's essentially.
Have you been down to those levels, or have you been shown them?
There is connections with IBIS and DULCE. DULCE is essentially officially it's a psychiatry centre. When the employees walk around the facility, there's certain sections with people in like hospital rooms with almost like prison rooms in a way, but not with bars, like plastic windows, thick plastic, and you have people there in hospital gowns and sitting on their beds, and the the briefing is that they're incurably insane, and that they're doing high-risk drug treatments on the insane. And it's actually a top-secret psychiatry facility. That's what they're first told when they go in there. So,
and then they never come out?
These people?
Yeah.
I think a lot of them don't come out. There's, as you go these particular hallways at DULCE, these rooms in the corridor curved round, and every kind of 12 rooms you have an operating theatre. These people are taken out as operating theatres. Yeah, and the Q552 facility in Canada, in Nelson, was there was a lot of Nazi psychiatry
and what's their
conditioning
function
going on there.
What sort of when you talk about conditioning?
Well, for instance, at the facility they were. It was essentially a trauma centre. Now, they did a lot of conditioning with us with wild animals. And what they were doing there, they used Canadian wolves, they used snakes, they used cats, wild cats, tigers and things. They were giving us the attributes of wild animals. They were subjecting us to them for when we were older, for all-terrain warfare. Jungle warfare, Arctic warfare. So we had the attributes of wild animals.
How do you get the attribute of a wild animal?
They used, they set up, I think it was the second level down at the Q552, they set up a kind of pen, 30 feet wide. They set up this pen, they put the babies in the pen, and they put wild animals in the pen. They might put snakes in there, or wolves. Only one type of animal at a time. They didn't mix the animals. There was always one type. Now this pen was very similar to a Skinner box they use in psychiatry.
What's a Skinner box?
A Skinner box is famous psychiatrist Skinner. I forget his first name. He designed this box, and they put babies in it, and they put animals in with the babies, and they were doing cognitive behaviour testing, how the babies would react to the animals. And they would, in this particular device, they put us in there, and they set up screens in the corners of the pen, and people's faces would be put on the screens, enlarged, and the faces would call us and get our attention. We'd look, and the faces would start talking to us, people, and then the faces would look like they were changing into half human, half whatever the animal was. So if it was a snake, if they were putting snakes in the pen, the person talking would start talking to us, and then his face would change into half human, half snake, lizard. And George Bush Sr. was the main handler of that particular facility, and his face would often come on the screen and talk to us, and he would do very much the reptile with the snakes. That would be his area.
Was that something that was done on a recorded type of a level, or was it he did it personally?
He was on the screen. I'm not sure if he was there sometimes physically, but I mean the guy travels all around the world to all different bases. He's a major programmer, so I don't know, he could have been over the other side of the world. And he would come on and
Is this something that you experienced directly?
I saw him. He used to talk to us, talk to me.
And what age were you when this happened?
This was 76. I was a baby. Yeah, and this carried on. I spent from 76 to 79 there, and grew up there. The Queen Mother as well. She was a programmer there. She would, her face would be flashed on the screen, but her speciality was wolves. Whenever they put the wolves in with us, she would come on. and she'd talk to us, and she would start to change into half woman, half wolf-like face on the screen.
Was this done by some kind of electronic video effect, or?
I don't know. I don't know.
Can you name any other animals associated with different other people?
The only ones I remember is George Brasina with snakes and the Queen Mother with wolves. The place was very dark. I'm still starting to. It's difficult to remember everything that happened there. It's still coming back in bits and pieces. I remember being put in the pen and this group of babies, and there were toys put in, and one of the babies took a toy off another baby, and the little baby turned around and hissed at the other child like a snake, and his face sort of went like a snake. So
this was absorbed into them psychologically, or?
Yeah.
Into their psyche?
Yeah. And with the DNA anyway, the Anunnaki DNA that the NSA were looking for.
In part one, we heard how Michael Prince is the birth name for James Casbolt, and how he was taken to a base in Canada near the small mountain town of Nelson in British Columbia for cyborg enhancement as mind-controlled children selected by their specific blood types, on how they were exposed to the open cold night in a large aircraft-style hangar to sort out the men from the boys, just as in ancient Sparta, then guarded by Nazi SS troops in modern-type uniforms in the late 1970s. Michael sent this scan of one of his security clearances. However, in earlier images he sent claiming to be at the DULCE base, this could be anywhere, so if anyone really knows what these forms refer to, please contact megawatts at blueyonder.co.uk.
Were you when this happened?
This was 76. I was a baby. Yeah, and this carried on. I spent from 76 to 79 there, and grew up there. The Queen Mother as well. She was a programmer there. She would her face would be flashed on the screen, but her speciality was wolves. Whenever they put the wolves in with us, she would come on. And she'd talk to us, and she would start to change into half woman, half wolf-like face on the screen.
Was this done by some kind of electronic video effect, or?
I don't know. I don't know.
Can you name any other animals associated with different other people?
The only ones I remember is George Brasina with snakes and the Queen Mother with wolves. The place was very dark. I'm still starting to. It's difficult to remember everything that happened there. It's still coming back in bits and pieces. I remember being put in the pen and this group of babies, and there were toys put in, and one of the babies took a toy off another baby, and the little baby turned around and hissed at the other child like a snake, and his face sort of went like a snake. So
this was absorbed into them psychologically, or?
Yeah.
Into their psyche?
Yeah. And with the DNA anyway, the Anunnaki DNA that the NSA were looking for.
So explain who these Anunnaki are. I mean, there's lots of different versions or different things about the Anunnaki. What is this kind of Anunnaki, or precisely?
That term's bandied around a lot. Our group there were Germanic roots, Aryan roots, which I would say connects to Aldebaran in the Pleiades. So I think Anunnaki, is a Sumerian word that just means visitors from the stars or something like that. So I think in our particular group, our heritage was, we discussed this before in the last interview, I think, it goes back to France, Germany, Bavaria, Greece, in the Middle East. Goes back, and
to Egypt, to the
definitely
Giza?
Connections with Egypt. Yeah, the tribe of Dan and Kaish. Yeah, definitely.
So
this is a white race, a white Germanic, Aryan race. I don't mean just blonde hair. So we were being conditioned every day, and
into what function?
Assassins, mainly. Assassins. There was there's psychic things, remote viewing, and that, but it's mainly assassins. Physical soldiers. This is why they wanted the all-terrain attributes.
So just basic soldiering?
Not basic soldiering. Specific operations.
Such as?
Crash retrieval, hunting, tracking aliens.
What kind of crash retrieval?
Ships that were shot down through alien creatures.
So you were specifically dealing with the crashed retrieval of non-human craft?
Yeah, that came later. There was many of them. Tracking alien entities through jungle terrain, desert terrains. Almost smelling them. Almost picking up this scent like a
even
wolf.
though to the average person many of these aliens would appear human, would you
there was all different types. We tracked all different types. There was a wolf type of being, bipedal humanoid wolf that were like a Bigfoot.
So
we tracked those creatures. We tracked those.
Were they people indigenous to Earth, or were they walk-in, like through the dimensional? Or
no, these were physical creatures that physically travelled in ships. There was a landing zone in. There was an NSA facility on the island of Penang. Dense, the Looking Glass facility, dense jungle coverage. Regular physical landings of ships would come down there. Some of these wolf beings.
Did you ever see the ships? Or?
Yeah, I saw the ships. That came later in the early 80s. If I just can stick to this, what happened in Canada. So we're being conditioned there. And essentially being tortured. It was a trauma centre. So...
how did the conditioning function? What happened when you were conditioned? What was done?
Well, they terrorise us. I remember the guards, these SS uniform guys would they brought a huge snake into the pen one day, and I think this was some kind of anaconda from South America. It took like 3 or 4 of them to carry it in. This was huge, and they put that in, and I remember a young girl there was involved in the program, in some way about 18 years old, and they fed someone to the snake in front of us.
Alive?
Yeah. It's difficult for me to look at the memory and look at the person, but I know someone was.
In the same way that we'd feed live rats to snakes.
Yeah.
Or live mice.
Yeah.
And what was the function of this?
I think they would break us down, terrorise us, to control us. I saw a lot of that stuff. Saw a lot of people, and later on I saw a young girl thrown in a cage with a wolf, and torn to pieces, and that was in England later on.
What part of England?
Berkshire.
Yeah. AO499.
Yeah. We had to be under armed guard 24 hours a day at the Q552 because it was there was groups apparently that wanted to rescue us from that, because there's not, if you...
How did you know about that? Did you find out that?
I found out later.
Yeah.
So they're definitely not all powerful or anything like that. It wasn't like impenetrable facility. You know, a lot of these facilities aren't. You can get in them if you really want.
Yeah.
And boss people out if you really want. We got to 1979 now, and we'd been raised there for those years between 76 and 79, and we were all put in SUVs, convoy of them, to be driven down to another base in America, DULCE, Mexico. Yeah, being driven, transported down to there in a convoy, and I remember we hadn't got that far out of the base. I think we were still in the mountains, and a helicopter seemed to come out of nowhere. Small special forces group came out, and there was a shootout, and some of the guards shot the children. Some of the SS guards shot the children before they could be rescued. Some of the children, but most of us were rescued, and we were brought to a building in Toronto, it was a large building, like a skyscraper.
Yeah.
We were brought there to an underground car park there, and the top level of the facility was
Just near Yonge Street, or?
I don't know where it was. I could try and find out, but I'm not exactly sure. But I know it was in Toronto, and we were.
Let me downtown Toronto, or?
I know the area that well.
Okay.
I just know it was there was a lot of skyscrapers there, and this was a very tall building. We were in the top level of the building. You could look out across the whole area in it. And
how many of them were you?
When we got to the building in Toronto, and we stayed there for a few weeks. I remember sitting in a room. We used to sit in classrooms together there. 15, 20 of us. Yeah, about that. So the group that rescued us were based around Com 12 in Majestic.
What's Com 12?
Com 12 is a group centered around US naval intelligence, but it's actually a Majestic group. I'm in contact with one of the men who rescued us in America in 79, but I can't say too much about him at the moment.
Right.
Again, another Germanic character.
We're seeing really that this Nazi control, this Germanic control, is very much in control, or are they tolerated within the organisation?
Well, there's good and bad in this faction. I mean, there's a whole Germanic faction which are fighting against the people doing all this evil in the.
So what do we have? What are the two basic good guys, bad guys? Okay, who are the bad guys, so to speak, and what is their aim, and what's their function, and what's the purpose of all that?
I can't simply separate it into two factions. We don't. We run on survival dynamics. What I mean by that is it's about the survival of ourselves, survival of our families, survival of the organisations we work in and our race. That's how we can understand. We don't believe in good or bad.
So ultimately, the good and bad side is essentially you're surviving.
It's us surviving, but then it's not just us surviving. We work on all the survival dynamics. Whereas if a person is abusing children, they're working against the survival dynamics. They're our enemy.
Right.
So this is how we can operate. We have to have lines and boundaries, or else we won't know who's who, and we won't feel righteous and justified to take military action, which we do on a regular basis. We went through operations there. There were surgeons there, and.
What was the function of those? Because
the surgeons cut us open and found cybernetics inside us. So at the Q552, they'd slowly been cybernating us with surgery. And essentially creating a cyborg soldier. Now, the surgeons at the place in Toronto, they cut us open, and apparently they were like, "What a mess, you know, this is," and they were thinking about trying to remove it, but then it turned out that this technology would integrate it into us. It couldn't be removed. It was actually a natural part of our bodies now.
Is this detectable in any way?
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. Yeah.
So are you saying that we could somehow, if we booked the relevant place, we could check out your cyborgs? If you went to one of those scanners in at the airports, would they see it? The new scanners.
Yeah, that's interesting. Apparently, the bone is a type of metal that I'm not a scientist, but it's something to do with being off the periodical chart. It's not a metal that's known to man, so it won't set off standard metal detectors. I've been told the closest thing we can compare it to on this planet is a mixture of gold and diamond. It's extremely hard.
So you don't know how that works technically?
There's apparently that's the bone, and then there's a small layer of kind of mechanical armour built around that bone to reinforce it further. And
is it sort of grown around it?
Apparently that is put in by some it's nanotechnology, the small layer of mechanical armour around the bone. The bone itself is apparently metal, this type of metal, and it's built with nanotechnology. Apparently they put some like worms or something in you, metallic worms, and they lay eggs, something like that, and it builds it.
Is there a process name there? Is any kind of?
I think it's connected to the name of the Osiris program, the Proteus program.
Right. Is there anywhere we could look that up? Is there any documentation we could look at that?
Not really. No. I mean, I've got information from NSA databases, but it's not documentation.
Yeah. So it's stuff you could look up on the internet as such.
This stuff's never been talked about. Again, they're slowly cybernating these soldiers.
What's the program name involved with that, or where's it happening? How's it happening in other facilities?
It's the umbrella project of IBIS, with numerous projects in that umbrella, including Mannequin. So yeah, these surgeons wanted to remove it because they didn't understand it.
So by removing it, would it cause more damage, so they had to leave it?
This stuff had integrated into us, so they actually classified a new life form, the scientists, after that. They classified us, they called it ascended, we were ascended machine technology.
Ascended machine technology.
Essentially a cyborg with a soul. And they developed a new law of robotics around us, a new science around us.
Does this develop onto the super soldier program?
Yeah, because they wanted to do things like they wanted to jump out of a plane without a parachute and land in the jungle, in the sea or in the jungle, run 40 miles through the jungle, and then take out your target and be picked up.
Are you able to develop anything more on that story?
Well, this came late to all these operations.
What do you mean by later, in the 80s?
Well, there's so many. I mean, the operation in Malaysia, for instance, that was a jungle warfare operation.
Which operation in Malaysia?
In Malaysia, on the island of Penang. This was...
and on what grounds and what type of military action are you talking about?
The lethal action, assassinations. We're having to take the fight to them.
And who is them? Where would that be?
Well, okay, you want names, you want
Well,
places.
we want some means of graphic.
Okay. 2007, myself and another individual drove up to London. We travelled to South London. It was around the Elephant and Castle area. Now, an SUV pulled up with MI6 operatives in that. We were given a briefcase. The briefcase had the pistol that I've used for years for assassinations, which is a 9mm Smith & Wesson with a pearl handle, and there's a symbol of a black dragon on the handle. And I call that gun Drago. And we were given that briefcase with that pistol. There were these small devices in there, cubes, which kind of artifact. They're very old pieces of hardware.
What do you mean by old? Are you talking about ancient technology?
I think it's an Egyptian connection, maybe thousands of years, maybe older, very old. What's that, little puzzle boxes? Small cubes, a bit like a Rubik's Cube, with metal around the side and engravings. And they're simply, you hold them in front of your certain energy centres, and you focus your brain waves through them. So if you have...
So are you saying that the handles of the gun or the crystals have got a signature to you so that you can only use it?
Yeah, that's right. The Drago only I can use. I mean, Drago has alien technology incorporated into it, has special types of bullets that have been...
So it's an ordinary bang gun?
No, it has special type of bullets that have engravings on them, on the bullets, and a special type of metal. Because when you...
So you are shooting a different type of being?
If you're
not just shooting an ordinary person then?
If you're going to shoot an enhanced soldier or intelligence operative, a Glock 17 is not going to do it. I mean, it's the chest plate's reinforced, the slug won't go through it, all the organs are protected. So
is the bullet essentially going to form a nanotechnology on it that breaks the structure of whatever it's hitting?
I think so, and there's some occult aspect to this with the engravings on. They're apparently these bullets are blessed by something to do with the Vatican, and they
this brings a new meaning to the term Vatican assassin.
Yeah.
So is it designed to go through some kind of psychic shielding of some description?
It's both. It's physical and the psychic aspect.
So it's got to break through some kind of thought-based force field.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where the engravings and the blessed by the Vatican.
It's nice to know that the Vatican are blessing us bullets to assassinate other beings. So that by definition, are you saying that the reason why you guys have been modified upon into being is because these other enhanced beings are running around the place, or land, or the alien or extra-dimensional beings, or what?
These are the same.
Is this all terrestrial?
These are the same human cyborgs, the same people who were raised in these bases. These are our counterparts. We're all the same team.
So you're essentially...
But these are our dark counterparts who we're warring against.
And that's because they've been programmed by these SS people?
We've all been programmed by the SS people, but we managed to bust out of it. They didn't. That's the difference.
So they've had their programming fully enhanced to a certain level, and then you've had your programming enhanced to try to destroy these other people?
Basically, it's an internal war. Yeah. And when we... the particular guy we assassinated on that night, his name was Dixon Ramey, not his real name, top MI6 operative. I think we got, you wanted to know some of the details about this internal assassin war. Dixon Ramey, not his real name, an MI6 mind control handler. He was my handler in the early 90s. And a handler of many prostitutes, many mind control prostitutes. We arrived at his house in South London, myself and another man, and I walked up the pathway, knocked on the door. A woman answered it, prostitute, MI6 prostitute who was living with at the time, and I used a cube to control her. And
can you describe these cubes? Are the size of Rubik's cubes?
A bit bigger than a Rubik's cube.
That's quite big.
Yeah. You just hold it in front of this energy center here. Just hold it, simple, and then you just talk to them. It's because it connects with the cranial implant. So you just say, okay, let me in. Sit in the front room, sit down on the sofa. He was in the
Where do you store a cube like that? So?
Well, you hold it in front of you, like that with two hands.
Yeah.
Like that. And it's just a matter of talking, giving commands. And sit on the sofa. Raimi was in the toilet at the time. The cube had already started to make him submissive when I was in the house. So he just came out the toilet in half trance anyway. I just told him to go upstairs and wait in the bedroom. And he just went upstairs and just sat on the bed and waited for me. And he had a bar there in the front room. And I got the woman to sit down. I got her to pour us a drink. We sat down, and we were looking for pearls. When I say pearls, it's an NSA code name for a suitcase nuclear weapon. He'd stolen the suitcase nuke. And
it's a bit careless of him.
Well, that's what got him shot. And
you then shot him.
So I interrogated the woman about the location. Turns out that this thing's on a boat, a certain boat in a certain location. Once I'd got the location of the pearl, the suitcase nuke.
Is this on the River Thames?
No, it was in an ocean. Yeah, on a boat, on a yacht. But I won't give the names of the place in the yacht. I had a little radio. I called my associate in, and we went upstairs, and he put a pillowcase over Raimi's head, and then I shot him in the face 7 times.
With the
pistol.
With the pistol, with the special bullets.
Yeah.
Is that because he needed the special bullets?
That was my MO, Miles. Several shots to the face on many targets. That was.
Is that to disable the brain functions if, in event of it being a Manchurian, it could continue functioning with one shot to maybe the other part of the body?
They don't want them to regenerate, and also they want to destroy the evidence of the cranial implants.
Yeah, they have to destroy them.
For the autopsy, in case the autopsy went into hands that they can't control.
What is your primary function now in talking now?
I'm still active.
What's the main thing you want to get across then? What's your
People need to know this, what's happening. They need to give themselves a chance.
What do you mean by giving themselves a chance?
Well, things are going to speed up and increase. This war's underground now, but it's going to burst onto the surface. It's going to burst into the streets, which it already is, but that's going to...
Can you suggest any indications which would illustrate that things are bursting into the streets?
I won't give any examples now. But people know what I mean in the next few years. And I just want to give people a chance.
I mean, there are suggestions that we've all been told that we've been programmed or led to believe that 2012 is happening. There's going to be catastrophic events. So there's a whole pile of major global catastrophic events being programmed by the so-called Illuminati to illustrate this is the end of the world and bang, 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 we're all going to die. The Japanese earthquake that's happened recently. Is that an example of that earthquake? Some people have suggested it was it was triggered artificially, or is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Well, I was in Knightsbridge at the time, and I was contacted. I was just around the corner from Buckingham Palace. I was staying at the Knightsbridge Hotel, and I was contacted by MI6 the night before, an official MI6 email address. And I was told tomorrow there's going to be a terrorist attack, and the guy who contacted me said, "We wish we could stop it." And they called it the Day of Rage. And
because there were a lot of YouTube soothsayers saying there will be an earthquake in Japan on Friday, and there was an earthquake in Japan on Friday.
And I replied back. I said to him, it's another terrorist event. What do you want me to do about it? And then the next day, the tsunami happened in Japan. So it's not a case of all these disasters are coming; they're happening.
They're being made to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to talk about the tsunami because it was a lot more than the tsunami. But what I'll say about that, and then I'll leave it at that, is people need to research the Battle of the China Gates. Captain Mark Richards. What happened there with the earthquake? What that really was?
The Battle of the China Gates.
Battle of the China Gates.
When was that, or where?
And that was in the late 70s. And then the earthquake there in China killed a huge amount of people. Well, that's all I'll say about that. I've given the name, people can research that themselves. Captain Mark Richards, Joanne Richards. Yeah, the body can, practically any wound can be generated. You're essentially indestructible. It can regenerate pretty much any wound. Get your arm blown off. They've got multiple cloned body parts of you, cloned organs, cloned legs, cloned arms. They just reattach another arm.
So it doesn't grow back?
No, it doesn't grow back. Wounds can regenerate themselves.
How quickly? Matter of hours?
In seconds sometimes. Yeah.
And how is that done? Is that done with your own power of your mind, or is it enhanced?
It's a kind of automatic process.
So it's done by the healing processes of the body, naturally?
Yeah, it's almost a speeded up healing process. But then if you suffer catastrophic wounds, you get your legs blown off in Afghanistan, they'll ship you to hospital, they'll attach new legs. Cyborg.
Is that what the coma hospitals are about?
I think that was the early experiments of that stuff, but they perfected it now. They don't need that, they don't need body parts from other humans. For every enhanced soldier, they'll have all these body parts on ice and cryostasis.
Are they grown, or do they keep whole versions of you around?
No.
How does the practicalities of that work?
I mean, I'm not a scientist or a geneticist, but I know that they take your DNA and then they build the arm and then they just keep it in cryo storage, frozen.
In part 2, Prince described in 1979 how he survived the rescue of enhanced cyber children as they were in convoy from the Canadian Nelson base, and then being taken to Toronto, where MI6 took charge. On active service in 2007, at a location near the Elephant and Castle area in London, he described assassinating an enhanced soldier who had stolen a suitcased nuclear bomb, or Pearl, and shooting him 7 times in the head with his 9mm Smith & Wesson pistol to destroy the cyber enhancements in the victim's skull. He described how this was done using a strange small cube of ET or ancient origin which was able to control the victim. So for more claims and details, back to Michael Prince in the Bases 9 interview 2011.
That was on the island of Penang. And in Malaysia. There's a NSA facility on the island there. It's a looking glass facility.
What's a looking glass facility?
They use looking glass technology there. Piece of hardware.
I mean, Project Looking Glass remote viewing thing, or?
It's a piece of hardware, looking glass. It looks, I got a photograph of it.
Is it a set of glass structures, or why?
It's almost like a gold-coloured metallic cannon with coils on the back of it, and they run mercury through the coils, and it opens up portals. They can look into different timelines with it on a video screen.
Is it human-derived technology, or?
I don't think so. No, I'd say it's alien-derived. I'm not 100% sure.
Right.
I'm not 100% sure where it comes from. But I mean, this particular event would I was taken there by my carer, who I was delivered into her care from Toronto and taken back to London in '81.
A mother figure, like a carer?
This was the woman, I mentioned her name on the interview of Richard last night. Kate Casbolt.
Kate Casbolt,
Yeah.
right, okay.
Yeah.
Which is where you get your persona, James Casbolt?
Yeah, not my biological mother.
Yeah.
I mean, we've discussed this,
Yes.
Kate and I. There's connections with MI6 with her, definitely.
So she's essentially there to keep you happy and healthy and in a sort of a normal way?
Yeah, kind of. It was complicated because there was...
Like a foster mother? Or?
Yeah, but then her husband before 81, Peter Casbolt, he was the MI6 agent who was involved in the drug trafficking operations. I mean, I've seen some of his file data from MI6.
And he's the guy who got killed, is that right?
He died in Doncaster prison in 2003. He was serving 6 months for possession of false passports.
And this was in conjunction with his function as in MI6, but why did they let it go through, or was it? Was he operating freelance, so to speak?
He would sometimes operate freelance. He'd take drugs from the shipments to sell on the side, and it isn't a drug.
So he extended his brief?
Yeah.
And they didn't like that?
Yeah. And there was also, I don't know, that's the reason why he died. There's something going on that I need
was
to
he
get
bumped
to the
off in
bottom
prison
of.
because people knew he was an agent?
I'm pretty sure he was bumped off. He was, his file data talks about him being involved in remote viewing programs for the NSA, a program called Albrighton Clear.
Albright?
Albrighton, because it was based in Hove and Brighton.
All right.
And there was an NSA remote viewing program run from Brighton. Albrighton Clear it was called. And I was given his identification number for that program. So he is MI6. The guy who raised me for a few years in Berkshire and Reading, Neil Pettit, he was never married to Kate Casbolt. They were never married, but they were together for a number.
What's his name again?
Neil Pettit. He worked just near Peasmore, Hermitage in Newbury.
Yeah.
He was a director of an aluminium company there, a big major company. It was a warehouse called Hymets. It's called Service Metals now. And he had defence contracts with the MOD. He worked underground at RAF Welford.
Can you describe more about Welford? Is it just there for nuclear weapons storage, or
I'm not too sure about Welford. I know he worked under there. He worked underground at Boscombe Down too, and there was some sinister aspects of the company. There was some kind of child pornography trade, video trade going on, within the company.
Is that connected with the ritual child abuse, trauma-induced monarch program?
I'd say that it's connected with the underground facilities. I remember when I was a kid in Reading in Berkshire, I found some videos underneath his dresser, and it showed, I put it on, it showed a group of men in a Masonic hall dressed in Egyptian robes, and they were sexually abusing little girls. On that particular video, it was a child pornography thing. Because I was being sexually abused by Neil regularly. He was multi-generational incest. His stepfather had come out of a Japanese concentration camp at the end of World War II, and when his name was Jim Murch. Now, when he came back to Berkshire, he started to straight away sexually abuse Neil and his sister, and there was satanic ritual elements of it where he killed the animals in front of them. Yeah, I remember Neil always, because Neil was an alcoholic as well because of all this, and he used to get drunk and sit me down, so always tell me the same stories when he was drunk. He used to always tell me about how when Jim took him and his sister out to go and killed the rabbits in front of them, killed the pet rabbits in front of them, cut their throats. And he used to say to me, do you know what a paedophile is? And I was young, I was sure, and he said, if I saw you in the pub and you told me you were a paedophile, I'd punch you straight in the face. He used to say things like that. But then when he used to get drunk, he'd go into blackout, then he'd come in my room and start sexually abusing me. And I think it was a kind of valence, whereas he was acting out what was done to him in a really drunken state. And I've been interviewed by CID in Cornwall about this, about the sexual abuse with Neil. It's on record. He lives in Australia, in New Zealand, and when I saw him a few years back, he says, I got this old German guy who lives next door to me, and I think he's a Nazi on the run. And we've got really close. He comes round all the time. He pretends he's senile. He's not. So this whole Nazi...
An Nazi pretends he's senile?
Yeah.
But is he working for the Nazis still?
Well, it's just no coincidence. He's got an old Nazi next door to him. He pretends to be senile, but he's not.
Yeah.
Okay, just before I say that, I'd like to say I'm not biologically related to either of the families I just mentioned, the Casbolt or the Pettits. I was taken to Malaysia by A.K.A. Casbolt, the island of Penang, and straight away remember being walking along a little road in the jungle there. There's a picture of me in the jungle at the time holding a snake in front of the temple. That was put on Project Avalon. And I just remember we were taken off the road by an army jeep and driven down a windy road in the jungle to a facility, fence facility, went in and separated from A.K.A. Casbolt. Taken underground in a lift, and there was kind of some command centre there, just serious computer operators in their desks, and taken by an American military officer and shown video footage. I think it was some kind of satellite video footage, and I'd honed him something to do with remote viewers too, and it showed a alien creature in the jungle, a type of bipedal wolf, almost like a small Bigfoot, but wearing almost a brown robe with a belt around it, with some kind of hardware around the belt, and it was a still camera shot. I personally think it was taken through the eyes of a remote viewer, and they were connected to satellite. I think it was a camera shot through their eyes.
So you can directly photograph and record what people see, either through through by telepathically remote viewing in, or by an implant, or
by an implant. It's all very physical, and I think that this was what the remote viewer saw just before he died, because this creature, as far as I know, killed that remote viewer, and that was the last thing he saw.
How did they kill the remote viewer?
I think he shot him with some kind of particle beam weapon, because I saw these creatures operate those.
So I mean, the remote viewer is physically not where the being was.
No, he's physically tracking the being through the jungle, and he's I think he's seen him from a distance, but when I say remote viewing, he's like a camera, he's zoomed into him
Using
from a long distance, using his physical vision, but using his remote viewing abilities to zoom in.
Right.
And
so when the other being shot him, did he shoot his presence as a remote viewer? Did he see like an orb or something? How does he see something?
No, he's physically there. The soldier's physically in the jungle, tracking this creature through the jungle, but the creature's at a distance far away. So the soldier has zoomed in with his vision, which is a type of remote viewing, but it's more physical because it's connected to satellite.
But then how's he shot if he's so far away?
Because the creature on the still shot that I was showing on the screen, the creature turned around like that and has looked. So, from my understanding, the creature seen him and then, like a sniper, shot him from long range with these particle beam devices that they use. So I was shown that, and I was the creature growled at the same time, and that was picked up, the sound. And below the still shot there was a sound wave of the growl. And the military officers used the word gruff. I'm not exactly sure what that meant.
A gruff?
Gruff, just gruff.
G-R-U-F-F.
Gruff. And they played the sound wave to me under the screen, which was the growl. And they played it to me once, and then they said, focus on it. And then they played it to me again, they played it about 3 or 4 times, and each time was picking up the energy signature of the creature.
What do you mean by the energy signature of the creature?
A lot of it was to do with its scent. I was picking up its scent, but by hearing it, I could smell it.
So that would help you track it?
Yeah, and this is where it comes into the conditioning we went through with the animals back in Canada.
So then, bring us to where the event happened.
So I was taken out again above ground, put in there was a 2-jeep convoy, soldiers in it, there was a woman in the front, and we were driven through the jungle it was like a path in the jungle basically, and we got out and we trekked through the jungle for hours. I mean, I was only a little kid, and after a couple of hours we stopped for a rest in this clearing in the jungle. It was almost like the pathway turned into almost a crossroads, like one path coming this way, one path there, like a crossroads. And we'd just stopped to have a drink and have a rest, and I'd pick something up in the trees, and
what do you mean by picked it up? Sensed it?
I smelt it, but it's more than just smell. It's like you can see smells. I picked something up in the trees, and I looked up and I saw it in the tree. We were supposed to be tracking it, but it had been following us.
It already knew you were coming?
Yeah, and it was there, it was in the tree. And I shouted up to one of the soldiers, I said, it's up there. And this is where the abilities of these soldiers comes in. This was the first time I saw the abilities of them. And this was later I would have the same abilities. The moment I saw it and it knew that I'd seen it, it kind of went up like that, and it shot some beam out towards me. It was almost like it made the air like swish, like a rotation, like that. I just felt the swish, like this rotation sort of coming towards me. But it was like metallic, but it glowed.
The air?
No, the thing that it shot, this particle beam or whatever it was. You could feel, it was so powerful, you could feel the air moving to come towards you, and it was swiveling as it came through. But it was so fast when my senses picked it up, and just before it hit me, one of the soldiers somehow projected some force field around my body. And
so this is a relatively slow...
No, it's very fast. This happened all in a split second. I'm not sure. It's almost like time slows down. And it all happened in a split second, but the soldier was able to project a force field around my body before it hit me.
So he'd already projected this to you?
Yeah.
As soon as you said where it was?
As soon as I clocked him, bang, he shot. He fired in the tree.
So this is a protection mechanism?
The soldier projected a force field around like an egg. It was almost like water. And then boom, it didn't hurt me at all. It didn't even... And then it all happened so fast, and then I seen another soldier. He's up in the. We were standing here, and he's up in the tree here on the left-hand side. Seen another soldier, like in a split second, he's there. He's whoosh, like a cat. He's run to the tree, and he's scaled up the tree. He's run up the tree like a cat.
Yeah.
Like an animal. He's actually run up this big high tree.
Is this like a palm tree or some kind of leafy tree or with lots of branches? Or...
It had quite a thick trunk, enough, it was bigger than his body, maybe 1.5, twice the size of his body. And he's standing there. It wasn't the soldier that projected the force field, it was a different one standing behind him, and he's there, he's in a split second like a cat, he's at the base of the tree. And like I say, then he's running up the tree, scaling up the tree like a cat. And he gets to the top of the tree, and he's like perched on top of the tree in the branch. He's perched like a bird or something, like squatted on the branch, like looking up, and his back is like expanded outwards. He's almost like pulled energy up, like from his centre, and he's like boom, and his back's boom popped out.
What popped out?
His back, the muscles in his back have popped out.
Yeah.
Like bulging out of his top. Like, and he's perched in the tree, and this thing has either jumped from this tree to the next tree, or he's some sort of teleportated to the next tree, to the next branch.
He's gone woof, just...
Yeah, but it's like he launched himself. But then you don't see him flying through the air. He sort of launched himself off the branch, and then like, poof, he appeared. He does the same thing. He chases him into the next tree, and he like sort of launches himself off the branch. But again, he's sort of teleportation. He just appears in the next tree, and then the creature's like boom to the next tree. They're chasing each other through the trees. The creature and the soldier. I mean, it's amazing to watch. And after a while, they obviously disappeared. You can't see them anymore. And one of the operators had a type of laptop computer, and this was like really. He got it quickly next to me, and he wanted me to tune in. I shut my eyes, and I could see a screen in my mind's eye, and I could see the creature's a red dot on the screen moving forward.
So is he following the creature, or is he following his compatriot following the creature?
The guy in the tree is chasing the creature through the tree.
Is the red dot the actual creature?
The red dot is the creature. This is some kind of satellite remote viewing thing, link up. And the red dot in my mind's eye is like a map. Is the creature moving in a certain direction, and the soldier following him is a green dot, following him in the same direction. And on the screen, on the laptop with the soldier next to me, what I'm seeing, the picture, the map, is on the screen. So he's tracking it, and he's reporting back to the base.
Were there more red dots?
Yeah, well, this is it. The other soldiers that were with us started running after them on the ground with their guns. They didn't have the ability to do all this tree climbing thing, they run through, and I saw them as a series of green dots as well, following behind the first soldier, not as fast.
In other words, he had backup.
Yeah, they were going through, and then I saw another dot moving in, a bigger one.
A red dot or a green dot?
I think this was a purple dot, the bigger one. And I said to the operator next to me, I said, he's calling in his ship. So he's calling in his ship. And
in other words, one of ours.
No, the creature was calling in his ship to escape because it was being pursued. And then the operator got on the radio and said something about air support, calling in air support. Must have only been maybe 30 seconds or a minute later, two huge TR-3 type of aircraft, black triangles, come really low over the trees. The whole ground was like rumbling. Come really low over the trees. I saw there, I could physically see them over the trees. They followed the direction of the firefight, and then after they disappeared from view. And then I heard some kind of missiles being fired. I heard
weapons fired?
Weapons being fired, but air weapons. And the ground was rumbling when these missiles were being fired. And then that was it. It had disappeared. And then the soldiers eventually came back. And they said he's got away. The creature had got away.
He got to his
ship and got away. And that caused us major problems.
What's the reason?
Because this creature was involved in our lives when we were adults. Isn't no coincidence. We were connected to this creature. This creature turned up at Peasmore. This creature turned up at other bases. And
is that the kind of creature that Barry King described?
Now this was a wolf. This was a bipedal wolf, like a small Bigfoot. With a type of brown robe.
You're not talking about something very tall then?
Yeah, tall, like a man, but like a wolf, like a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
6 foot, something like that. And he was very similar to the flying humanoids, the footage you see in South America. It was kind of similar to that. I think they're creatures, I've heard the name creatures from the Canis Empire being bandied around. I think they're extraterrestrials from Sirius.
I've never heard of them before.
No, nobody's ever talked about them before.
They're on YouTube.
But nobody said they're sort of bipedal wolf people from Sirius, Canis Empire. But it's just when I saw the footage on YouTube, the flying humanoids, it was similar to what I saw in the jungle in Penang. And
so that was an unsuccessful mission then?
Yeah.
But how long was that in the planning? What happened that this creature was detected?
Apparently the creature had come into the area. There was some military conflict going on in Malaysia at the time. The SAS, the SAS.
Is that because those creatures are used to train more of the enhanced super soldier type children by the SS?
This creature had come in to. It was somehow learning about human emotions. It was learning from the conflict of the soldiers killing each other in the area. There was something to do. There was some military conflict between the SAS on the border of Malaysia and Thailand at the time. And
so this is a conflict that we could look up.
Yeah, it was an official conflict, an official war, and the creature had come in. It was learning about the human emotions. It was studying the conflict, and it was almost feeding when the soldiers were killing each other in the jungle. It was almost feeding off their energy, almost in a sexual way, feeding off the death and the fear and the hate. So it's very nasty.
So then that would be useful for reprogramming or programming more super soldiers or more enhanced soldiers?
Well, the creature turned up at Peasmore and was used in the programming.
So it turned up at Peasmore before or after?
This was years later.
Yeah. Oh, years later?
This years later, yeah. It came back to the planet. I mean, it might never have left the planet.
So why were we trying to pursue it, to kill it? Or were we trying to kill it? Were you trying to kill it?
I think they were trying to kill it.
But then why would it then come back in and say hello?
Because it obviously escaped, and then it had its human collaborators, which would probably these factions that we've talked about that haven't got a human race best interest at heart.
In part 3, Michael Prince claimed the Looking Glass project was a piece of hardware involving Mercury. It allowed operators to open portals into different timelines. Could this be related to the Nazi Bell project from World War II? He describes his life as James Casbolt, with his carer, Kate Casbolt. This gave a background to life as James and his stepfather, who died in prison in 2003. The MI6 connection is further enhanced. A complex, sickening family arrangement involving child abuse, satanic rituals, is familiar territory in this dark tale of mind control, the Nazi SS in a modern age, and an alien human war. While a young child in 1982, his service on an active mission in Penang, Malaysia is described. The pursuit of a humanoid bipedal wolf-type alien is described. In this final section, Prince's missions in Brazil and an active mission involving Dave Marrow, who we saw in Basis 7, and a shoot-down of a strange octoform alien creature's craft in St. Ives in Cornwall in March 2011. Prince declares World War III is in progress and we're going to win it. The viewer must study Prince's voice and mannerisms to see just how much of this is actually true, or some kind of wild fiction with access to incredible detail. With more to follow from Casbolt's colleague, the Grid Keeper, and Barry King, we now bring you Michael Prince in Part 4.
Any further points you want to get across this time?
I'd just like to mention 2 points quickly. After that, I was transferred to a facility in South America, in Manaus, near Brazil. This was actually a facility in the Andes Mountains, big underground city. And that was another NSA facility, codenamed Plume. And George Bush Sr. was there again.
Was that when he was president?
This was...
Or as vice president?
This was 83, 84, mid-80s.
Yeah, work it out.
Manaus, Brazil, facility codenamed Plume, and in the Andes Mountains. And that was a Nazi training facility. We were trained in a huge hall there. There were groups of children divided into 15, 20 there. A huge hall. Some of them would be doing climbing, wall climbing. Some of them would be shooting martial arts. And the hall had 2 Nazi banners near the door, one on each side, swastikas. And Dr. Green was there. Because Project Ibis was started in 1972 at Tavistock Institute, and Dr. Green was one of the people that started it, and Joseph Mengele from Auschwitz. He was at Plume. Joseph Mengele, he programmed us. George Bush Sr. programmed us. We did operations there. George Bush Sr. actually gave us medals there for that facility. We all lined up in the pin.
Is that where the Nazis, Brazil or that part of South America is meant to be known for where the Nazis went after World War II?
This was Manaus.
Manaus.
Yeah. And the second point is we mentioned that there's a big cloning aspect of this. A couple of years back, 2008 it was, a close friend of mine, driving along the motorway in Worthing, and a car pulls up behind him, starts flashing its lights, and there's 2 guys in there. One of the guys is going like that, for him to pull over. So my friend pulls over, the car pulls up, guy gets out in a suit, opens the door and says his name. He says, could you come with us, please? And I'd like you to follow my colleague along the road. And my friend became very compliant. The guy in the suit gets in the passenger seat, the car pulls out, says, can you follow my colleague, drive along the motorway, follow it up, drive into a car park. Up there's an SUV in the car park, and the door opens, first person he sees sitting in the SUV is me, second person he sees is another person that's here at Pro, another close friend of ours, third person he sees is a perfect replica clone of himself sitting in the SUV. So
can you mention the other person that's here at Pro?
I won't mention his name on camera, we can talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
It's one of those SUVs, like a little conference room with a back table, like 5-7 chairs around it. There's two other young guys that he'd never seen before. And you get in and say, shut the door, the other guy waits outside, and they all sit down, they all just sit there staring at each other. He's got a clone of himself, he's fully conscious, got a clone of himself sitting there looking back at him. The operative in the suit says, okay, says his name, what have you got to tell us? And he turns around and says, I don't know what you're talking about. And so I'm sitting there, at the time, my clone is in St. Ives with the Casbolt family. There's pictures of him there. And so again, sitting there, and he says, there's a silence, everyone's just sitting there staring at each other. Really bizarre situation. Again, the guy goes, okay, what have you got to tell us? And again, he says, I don't know what you're talking about. And then the guy says, okay, I think this meeting's over. And then when he says that, the guy outside just opens the door, like they're communicating telepathically. All get out, and they just drive off, just leave him standing there in the car park. And there's a picture of one of my clones, a photograph of one of my clones in Iraq working for Blackwater, and the intelligence community put it on the front cover of I Spy magazine. And we've got a copy of that, you can see the picture on the internet.
Well, what edition of I Spy magazine?
42 or 47, I've got the picture, I can send you a link. And it's a perfect clone, but there's no tattoos.
Does he know that is he aware it's a copy of you?
Is the clone?
Yeah.
I don't know what he's aware of. It's not
until you talk to him.
I mean, there's only one me.
Yeah.
But that's there on the front cover. There's also some crash retrieval video footage taken in Chichester. There's me at the crash retrieval site. Just there's another person here, who's here at Probe.
That's two people here.
Yeah, no, there's me and another person here at Probe now. They're at the site of the crash retrieval footage. There's a shot down alien ship on the video footage. There's a group of reptilians on the video footage. There's a body, a small alien body. There's
what type of body?
It's filmed by an associate of ours who's connected to the SAS. It's filmed at Goodwood Hill in Chichester near Goodwood Airfield at night. He's filmed it from about a mile away. It's a series of hills.
It's very indistinct, that material.
Yeah.
It's not sort of there's the alien, but what?
You can see, if you examine it closely and look at it, you can see that there's a group of beings that, if you can compare the other guy who's here at Probe, very tall, 6'3",
yeah,
that these group of aliens walk past him, they're towering above him, they must be 8 foot tall on it, and they're carrying the body away. They're all walking.
Are they Valon?
They're reptilians,
yeah.
These creatures with horns. Now you can make out the horns if you look closely, if you blow
What kind
the video
of horns? Are they stuff horns or?
Not huge,
Like
just about here.
Short stubs?
Yeah, short stubs. And you can make it out in the video footage if you blow it up and keep stopping it, look closely, you can see the horns on the head. And they all walk in perfect sync together like robots, like they're all a collective. can see that. You can see they're not walking human. On it, they carry the body back to their ship. You can see their ship on the left-hand side. You can see an object with a beam come in. And then there's the fire engine to the right, and the vehicles. That's where the SAS were. That's where I was, on the right-hand side. My friend, who's a pro, and another two of our associates there stood in front of the ship. Now, when the reptilians walk past my friend, you can see him, if you slow it down again, look at it a few times, blow up, you can see he freaks out like that when they walk past him.
Is that because of shock?
Because they're so close.
Yeah.
And these scary things. And they've got close. If you see them from a distance, you have, a bit of denial there. Up close, you can see them, do that. And they're passing some sort of hardware. Those operatives, those human operatives near the craft, have passed hardware back to the reptilians that they've just been loaned, and it's again these small cube type devices. And these cube type devices, they have many, they do many things.
And they operate by thought?
Yeah, they connect to brain waves. On this particular night, there was. My friend doesn't remember everything about the operation. I don't remember everything about it, but there was something to do with we brought this craft down with these cubes. Again, some kind of particle beam weapons. And I'll just end it, as you can see the craft has been shot down behind my friends.
Have you ever been involved with off-planet functions?
Yes.
And when I talk about off-planet, there's extraterrestrial, physically in this universe, or has it been through a portal of some kind, like into a different dimension?
This was Sirius, a planet on Sirius, and this was.
What was involved there?
This was a transport from the facility in London, mid-90s. Transported on the underground tube system through a Stargate from London to a planet on Sirius.
Is there a particular train station that is a Stargate?
There's the Stargates in London, CLC.
So you go. That's basically near Westminster.
Yeah, there's a hotel on Park Lane. And there's an underground car park there. You can drive into that. If you got the clearance, go down the lift. Then you can get into the lower sections. If you got the clearance, get on the train through the Stargate to this planet in Sirius. It's like a water well with a big landmass in the middle. There's a facility on the ocean bed which is a perfect replica of the Pentagon.
Why does it have to be a perfect replica of the Pentagon?
The Pentagon is a perfect replica of this facility.
Right.
That's more correct.
Yes.
But I think this facility in Sirius has been there thousands of years. And they basically.
So that means they must have known about this and seen it, obviously, to build it.
Well, they've been there. The people, I think the people that built the Pentagon have been to this place. And it's interesting because I think it's divided into like 7. It's a Pentagon within a Pentagon within a Pentagon. Each section of the facility houses a different alien race, and it's actually an artificial intelligence facility. The
facility is an intelligent.
Is an artificial intelligence. It's actually an AI-based computer system controls the facility and controls each alien race in each section of the facility. And AI is doing experiments to see which of the races in the universe, I think there's 7 root races.
The artificial intelligence
is doing experiments to see which one is has the highest survival dynamics, which race is basically the most powerful. And
so this artificial intelligence, who was it made by?
I think it's really old.
Well, you mentioned in some of your emails about an artificial intelligence system which has taken over the planet, and we are trying to fight against that. Is that something?
It did take over the planet, but there were some operations last year in France, in the north of France, and it was shut down.
How does it manifest itself? I've got a theory that the electricity supply system and the computer supply system and the broadcast system are being used by an artificial intelligence to take control of us. That's what I summarise as what's going on. Is that related to that?
This is a huge subject. It's a huge scientific subject. and I know a fair amount of it, but it's all included in the Project Ibis data that's been released on Camelot by Kerry Cassidy.
Right.
So all people need to do is type in James Casbolt Ibis, and that'll come up.
Now, is that being released by you personally, or is it being released under your name when you're under that?
That is my data.
Yeah.
That's been released by Kerry. In that paper, in those papers, and that data on Camelot, I'm talking about the physical computer system, how it operates.
Are they essentially vehicles being used by the agencies to disinform or inform, or both?
Probably say it's a mixture.
Yeah.
Mixture. There's some good information coming out.
What things should we look for?
It's alien-human war. World War III, alien-human war.
And that is going to be manifest as sort of ETs running down the street shooting people, or flying saucers landing on Blackpool Tower?
That's happening all the time, Miles. There's, I sent you the briefing report about what happened in St Ives a couple of weeks back, which was in broad daylight. A ship was shot down. There was jets over my daughter's school, military jets. Next thing, this was in 3:15 in the afternoon. The ship was shot down. It came down in the back garden on Park Avenue. Police, fire brigade.
And there was some kind of octoform?
They sealed the roads off. I got sent up there. I got sent in, and
an octoform would be what I would describe as an octopus.
Well, this was a physical large octopus. There's nothing etheric about it.
This is the kind of thing.
Well, this was a physical large octopus. There's nothing etheric about it.
This is the kind of thing that I've seen trying to break into the back of Sky Television.
It was. It had come down. It had crashed into the shed, set the shed on fire on Park Avenue.
Was this its craft or the creature itself?
No, the military jets had shot the craft down. It had come down, hit the shed in the back garden of a house on Park Avenue.
What sort of size of things are we talking about here?
What, the ship?
The ship, yeah. 10
Small,
feet, 20, not a big thing.
20, 30 feet.
So this octoform exists really in a whole craft?
The octoform is that high, that wide, the tentacles, maybe 6 feet. It's the craft that set the shed on fire. The thing had come out the craft, scuttled along the garden, that's a good word, and that climbed up the side of the building and broke the window and was hiding in the attic of this house. And this is... There's paper reports in the papers about the fire breaking out, and there was just another fire. A car had been set on fire a couple of hours before. By the military shooting alien ships down, because it's World War III, human alien war. And people say it's disinformation. They want to create an alien threat. They're sending PLFs in. These are all PLFs, and it's all a big setup to stage World War III, stage an alien invasion. It is not. There is groups working with there's human groups working with aliens to stage an alien invasion, but there's a real alien invasion alongside it at the same time. So there's a stage one and a real one at the same time.
Just in the way the 7/7 bombings, you had a thing staged there, and you had the real bombings.
Yeah, the real thing. So this is why this information is coming out. This is going to increase. This is, anytime you see a fire in the street now with police sealing the roads off, ambulances, fire engines, and you're not allowed near it. Be suspicious, investigate it, find out what went on.
So we're losing the ability to keep the cover up, the lid on the cover up. So at what point do we have a holy shit situation? Are we getting near to that point?
Well, we're kind of in it now, but I don't think it's anything. We're going to win. This is.
You don't think we're going to win?
No. What I mean is we are going to win. When AI did this, these series of scientific tests to work out what race had the highest survival dynamics in this underwater facility, it was determined that the human race had the highest survival dynamics. Now there's philosophies that say the human form is the original form in the universe. It's the most perfect form in the universe. So, and this is why. So we're going to win. It's going to be about herding people into safety zones, and we're going to have to take care of it. I mean, the average man on the street isn't not going to be able to do much.
There'll be people already in the population who'll be activated to move people along, get people out of the way.
Yeah, at the same time dealing with the threat. So it's being handled on every level. So it's dangerous, but the situation's under control.
You got a bit of a scar there. Just thought, is this an example of what was involved with your technology, or?
No. This is connected to it.
Yeah.
This is connected to Royal Berkshire Hospital, and there was this Osiris program, body parts. Because sometimes if you get your body damaged, instead of just surgery putting you back together, they might just cut the body part off and attach a new one. Some people know who my fiancée is. We're getting married soon. Her story, her testimony, what she's been through, will change the world in many ways.
Is she able to discuss that at any time?
She's not able to discuss it at the moment. There's too many implications with her. You know, we're having constant harassment in many ways, and we're having to take the fight to the people who are harassing us. We've got constant protection, bodyguards. You know, when we met in France last year. She wasn't allowed into the country. She was detained
in this country.
At Heathrow, when she tried to visit me from America. Some very nasty things happened. Very nasty things. I think you know about that.
Yeah.
And we had to meet in France. We had a bodyguard there from a private security firm, chauffeur. And he drove us from France to. On the ferry, we came through Plymouth Border Control, and we were pulled in again at Plymouth Border Control. And the two MI5 officers turned up, posing as police officers, and said they're questioning me under some anti-terrorism act. They gave me the leaflet, 2006 Anti-Terrorism Act. Said if I didn't answer their question, they were going to arrest me. The woman who questioned me looked very much like Stella Rimington, ex-head of MI5.
Yeah.
And when we came back from America recently, Director Bonner was at the airport. Director Bonner, Alfred Bonner from MI6.
Was up there to make sure you got through okay?
He was there. We got through okay, but he was there just at the end, just showing his face.
Just to set up.
The cavalry's there.
Yeah. So what about Nazis?
Oh God, straight to the point. I'm interested in the fact that many moons ago, in my more young and enthusiastic days, I supposedly, allegedly channeled, and that's the only way I can put it, a whole load of information which seems to be coming true, or at least certainly becoming more mainstream. And I always at the time believed that a lot of what people were experiencing in terms of alien abduction was to do more with secret research projects that probably originated back in the Third Reich.
What kind of secret research program?
Well, I mean, I think everything from propulsion systems involving anti-gravity to genetic, research, and obviously they're trying to create an Uberman, an Uber race, genetic knowledge that potentially could cause unrest between racial groups, obviously, which has happened in the past, and which we don't want to happen again.
But that's deeper, though.
It's much
something deeper. What are those messages?
About the alternative technology, alternative propulsion systems, and genetic research. It probably wasn't clear in the first video, but I was a UFO researcher. I researched with London UFO Studies. I researched when I moved out of London with another local UFO group. So I came at it from that, from things that had happened to me. Obviously, got me into UFO research. But once I got into it and started looking at cases, and just take the case of Betty and Barney Hill, the whole Nazi link there, and they were a mixed race family as well, which is interesting. So I do think that an agenda, whether that agenda is an alien one or a human one, is still happening, that potentially started or at least revealed itself in the Third Reich and in some of the stuff that was going on back in the Third Reich. Now, whether or not, as some people allege, that links back to different alien groups seeding different bloodlines on Earth is anyone's guess. As some people allege the Nazis believed they were. This alleged race that lived in, Agartha and Shambhala. Honestly don't know. I mean, I've only just literally been out a long time, and it's only recently that things have happened in my life.
What's the Nazi connection with Cornwall? Why do they want here?
Well, I mean, that's an interesting one. I don't know why. I mean, I can only theorise.
We just interviewed Michael Prince, and he's talking about the Nazi connection a lot in
yes, that's right. And that's one of the reasons why I've decided to speak out, because that he, I've only met him once, and he was obviously very much triggered by Barry King's information, and obviously that made him remember, recall, or connected with him on some level, and now he is speaking about the Nazi link. It has made me think, well, he's in Cornwall.
More correctly, the SS link.
The SS, the SS.
What's
absolutely.
The speciality about the SS?
The thing about the SS, it's interesting with the SS. I mean, the SS on one level was, a police.
This is the whole point.
Well, it is. Yeah, but we don't officially. It isn't. But I mean, yes, I accept that there probably are, operations and schemes that are of that ilk, and possibly there is an SS now, yes, but I mean, in terms of what we know, that we can prove, they don't exist anymore. What we do know about the past, we can prove. We hope we can prove. And there has been an awful lot of research done on the SS, that they were sort of everything from a secret police force, which obviously does link into the whole Big Brother agenda, and the potential for chipping people, which again I think resulted from concentration camps, and that was something they were thinking of doing then if that system had carried on, to intelligence gathering. They obviously, gathered intelligence. And then there was another side of the SS. There was a more esoteric side that was definitely born out of research from groups like the Tula and the Vril Society, who did have a whole Aryan race supremacy slant. Taking that out of the equation, however, they also looked into exceedingly innovative technology. They had Schauberger, they had, a number of other people.
Non-Jewish physics, in other words.
Yeah, well, yes.
Einsteinian.
Well, yes. I mean, I suppose, I don't know if any people who were Jewish were involved. I mean, there is also a lot of evidence that demonstrates there were an awful lot of part Jewish members of the SS, and it does look as though the SS was selective in terms of who they felt they could use and who they felt they couldn't, and I think that if you walked the walk and talked the talk and you had a couple of Jewish grandparents, if you were useful to the SS, they might have turned a blind eye as long as you did what they told you, and they would have been a file on you as well, so you'd have done what you were told. But I think that things like Kamler, I think, is one of the most interesting characters in the SS to go into if anyone's interested seriously in looking at this stuff. He basically took over from Heydrich a lot of the issues that Heydrich was overseeing, primarily to do with the final solution, but also the more secret research projects on propulsion systems. Now, at the time Heydrich was alive, they weren't really very well known. I mean, they were still in developmental stages, the Haunebu, by that. And Kamler took over those duties from Heydrich.
And he became a central figure in this.
Kamala did.
And he was allegedly died 3 times? Or
Well, there's three different, yes,
death?
that's right, there's 3 different examples of his death. One alleges that he was assassinated in Prague, and that's interesting because actually Heydrich was assassinated in Prague. There's another one, I think, that he went off to Argentina, was it, or one of the South American states, rather like Eichmann did. And then there was another one that he disappeared, or I don't know.
But the only connection there was General George Patton.
Okay.
And he had to be assassinated because he knew too much.
That's an interesting one that I haven't picked up on. And I also think Admiral Byrd knew too much.
And he encountered the Germans.
Well,
The British allegedly went
Byrd,
in a year after Byrd.
I didn't know that, but Admiral Byrd obviously went out with a number of battleships and turned around pretty damn quick and went back to Washington and said, look, the next time we have a war, we're going to be dealing with craft that can fly from pole to pole in minutes. And they shut him up.
Because I've interviewed a guy called John Irwin who witnessed 2 German descriptive flying saucers in the Jordanian, Syrian desert area in 1959.
The original Haunebu technology, I mean, when you go back to look, I mean, there's very little around about Maria Ortish, and there's also complications about how her name is spelt. A lot of people spell it Orsic, O-R-S-I-C. I don't believe it was that. I believe it was Ortish. And I was always told, well, so people can research her if they want to. Maria Ortish, A-U-S-T-I-C-H, I think, or A-U-T-I-S-C-H, apologies for that. But I mean, again, she was a real medium, and she is the one who allegedly channeled the Haunebu blueprints, or certainly the instructions.
Was it anything to do with an alleged crash in Germany in the 30s?
There is an allegation.
Marconi was involved with that?
I don't know about. Well, Marconi, obviously, of course, was involved with Cornwall because you've got the Marconi station.
That's something crucial to do with broadcasting and transmission.
Yes, well, that's a possibility. I mean, again, I haven't looked into that, but I mean, there certainly is a rumour that in 1936 a craft did crash in the Bavarian forest, and that's where Hitler got hold of the technology. You know, that they're sort of having UFO experiences, you know, and they're coming out with stuff about Nazis. There's a sudden dramatic increase in people wanting to read about Nazi UFOs. It's really becoming quite a hot topic.
There's a new film.
There's a new film coming out, Iron Sky. Now that's a comedy, obviously. But it's like the Nazis went to the moon in 1945, and now they've got their technology. Now they're coming back to get their planet back, and so there's all of that coming out as well. And it does seem like this is the next stage. You've had the whole greys. Everyone knows the grey image now. I mean, everyone's familiar with that, whether or not we can.
What are the grey images? Because I've had information of a particular type of grey which is controlling major elements of Sky Television.
You see, I couldn't possibly comment on any of that.
There's a type of grey with a walnut headed skull, a walnut shell type skull with a very thick ridge down where the 2 halves of the skull join.
Okay, we're talking about the midcranial bone ridge here, where the centre of the skull joins together, and that's because the 2 halves of the brain are completely isolated. Is that correct?
And what's known as the zeta reticulum, or the grey, the shape of the brain is split in half by a midcranial bone ridge. The zeta reticulum's brain is not connected. The 2 halves of the brain are split by a solid ridge of calcium right down the middle of the skull. And it's interesting that a couple of years after being told that, Puerto Rican drawing, because I read the Spanish language, and I started subscribing to a Spanish language magazine from Puerto Rico, and one of the UFO witnesses drew an alien grey as having a mid-cranial bone ridge, a quite distinct line down the middle of the head to make sure he conveyed what he had seen. So it's a very interesting correspondence there. I do think Jorge Martin's Evidencia OVNI is a very useful reservoir of information for people who want to get supportive data, albeit it is in Spanish. Nevertheless, for people to see exactly the same thing on a highly isolated island out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean is surely quite strange.
But with regards to Ron, I mean, I'm fascinated in Ron.
So what happened to Ron?
What happened to Ron? Well, I mean, that's a really interesting question.
What was Ron? What did he do?
What did Ron do? I met Ron when I started a UFO special interest group with Mensa, when I was a member of Mensa. And I wanted to get people with brain power to look at the situation. And for a while it happened, and Ron was one of the ones that offered to help me run the newsletter. Now, Ron lived quite locally to me. This was in North London. This is all I know of Ron. He originally ran an esoteric bookshop in Highbury, in Islington. I don't know when he closed that, but he was a Crowleyite. He believed very much in Aleister Crowley. He was also an amateur radio enthusiast and very skilled with that, and was very big into sort of finding, I mean, you know more about this than me because I'm not a radio buff at all, but
scalar wave,
yeah,
over the horizon,
yeah,
woodpecker signal, which we filmed all those years ago, shortly before he died.
That's right. And he was starting to come out with this stuff and starting to really talk about it, and he had an interesting background, and actually the thing that this is interesting that we bring Ron up, because it is down to Ron. This started with me. I wanted to find out if I had been abducted by a UFO, because I was having all these experiences and dreams and what have you that led to my becoming quite over-enthusiastic and probably making a total idiot of myself. But that's just how things worked out. And I said to Ron, you really have got to help me find out what's going on. So he said, look, I'll hypnotise you. Yes, I said, I don't mind you doing that, because I trusted him. And he hypnotised me, and all I did was come out with stuff about Hitler. I just came out with all this stuff about Hitler and the SS, and I don't remember all of it because he didn't record it. He didn't write it all down, but he got extremely engrossed in what I was saying. And it wasn't that night, but it was a few weeks later where he actually told me that he'd looked into some of what I'd said. And he had this little sort of esoteric book that came from Germany, and it was all in German, and I don't understand German, but I understood enough to know that what he was pointing out to me was true, and as he was reading and translating it to me, that, it was from what my limited knowledge of German. And it certainly looked as though a lot of what I had alleged about the kind of experiences Hitler had,
Can you say what those were?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't prove or disprove this, but I can throw it out there and somebody else might know, that Hitler had visitations in the night from tall blonde beings, that Hitler was basically in a nightmare state, that he was completely at fever pitch by this, and it completely engulfed him, and he had all these really kind of strange beliefs about being chosen to do something in particular and to bring in this new world and all of that with this alternative technology, free energy, all of that kind of stuff, and that's basically what it was. And because the first question, that Ron had asked me was, can you tell me, what's happened to you in terms of UFOs, and and do you have any sort of recall about having an experience with a UFO? And I laughed and said, no, well, they're not going to bother with me because I know too much about it anyway, and just proceeded to talk about Hitler and the SS.
And what was talking about Hitler and the SS?
Well, it was basically saying that most UFOs weren't even alien. They're not going to bother abducting somebody who was involved back then and who knew what was going on. And I didn't make the connection. I just...
We're referring to Nazi flying saucers.
We're referring to the Haunibu and the Vril Society and the Tula, which I knew very little about in those days. You're talking 1994. There was very little about any of that. I think the video Secrets of the Third Reich, UFO Secrets of the Third Reich, came out around the time.
I think.
Yeah, I think he was around already.
Michael Hesselman.
Yeah, but I mean, it was only literally, I hadn't seen it at that point, because it was after that I went and bought it when I saw it. So yeah, but yeah, it was just basically that. And then of course Ron and I, being that we were very interested in the situation anyway, we just used to sort of talk about stuff that went on back in the war, and he felt...
What stuff that went on in the war?
Well, with the Final Solution mainly, and again, I didn't really see...
What was the purpose of the Final Solution? What really was the purpose of it?
Oh my God, that's a difficult. How can anyone say?
I mean, apart from bumping off a lot of people.
Oh, there's
what
some
really
horrible theories. There's some horrible theories.
Well, what is the theory? Because
this is not my theory. Okay, this is not my theory. Just to categorically state that, I've been doing some research and I've found everything ranging from it was a sacrifice. That there's a website that I found the other day that alleged that the actual camps, concentration camps, formed particular sacred geometry shapes and various other things, and that there was some kind of an organised. Yes, that is the implication.
Does this all seem to be pointing to that level, into some other reality?
This is the implication, and of course, one wonders whether there is some kind of an agenda with another race of beings who potentially did give technology in return for this soul energy. Now, to bring in, can I bring in?
Thomas talks about the Naval.
Well, I don't know anything about them, and I don't usually
Anunnaki.
the Anunnaki. I think of them as the Anunnaki because I've read Sitchin, so I suppose that's where I kind of came from with that. But my friend basically alleges that they are stuck in the. She says they're stuck in the fifth dimension. Apparently, they falsely ascended themselves with monatomic gold. And they're stuck. They basically ascended without going through the process that you're supposed to get there. Again, my friend says that we are multidimensional, but the whole point is to bring all the aspects from all the dimensions into the one you are now.
Yes.
So that you can. That's what Chris Thomas said. Yes, I know, because I looked at Chris Thomas and I thought that's exactly what my friend says. So I trust that because I trust my friend. And that's the process that I've been going through myself, which is why integrating some of my past life aspects has been pretty hard. I was blown away by some of what he said. Some of it I didn't resonate with, but then that's the same with everything. You resonate with some stuff, you don't with others. But I felt that there was a hell of a lot of truth, in the truest sense, about what he said. And I felt very much that this is a truth that actually could appeal to the ordinary person on the street, because it's nothing you have to become a particular guru or Buddha to actually experience. All you've got to do is really find who you are. It's quite simple. And my own personal theory, however crazy it sounds, is that, we can affect our reality by our state of consciousness. And I don't think
my take on this is that our consciousness is being deliberately manipulated, so we do.
Possibly, that's a
strong.
Yeah.
Point.
I mean, that is a very strong possibility. Yeah, that
directly engineering reality, and this is
again the whole concept of creating one's reality with consciousness. If people are feeling like shit, excuse my language, they are going to respond accordingly.
We're talking about scuttlers,
right?
Now, do you know them as scuttlers?
I've never known them as scuttlers
because they scuttle. Black spider crab type things.
Yes. Well, what happened?
What did you see?
What did we see? Well, before I had an extremely weird experience in 1999, which I do not know whether
You've had a lot of weird experiences.
I had a hell of a lot of weird experiences. But
so
this was
amongst weird. How weird is this?
This was off the scale weird because I can't explain any of it. I can't even really explain it with psychology because I went to see psychologists and none of them said that there was anything wrong with me.
They just say you're not so.
No, the trouble is that there was nothing wrong with me. That's the problem. I wanted there to be something wrong with me so I could take a pill and make it go away, but there was nothing wrong. And because I was getting this whole load of information about what was happening in Bosnia, and every week I was predicting what was going to happen next, I kind of proved to these psychologists that precognition is real. So actually he was very interested in me. But what we had before this strange experience that involved a signal going into my ear and the playing out of...
That's for the blue beam thing?
I have no idea. This is the thing. I need to find this out. But before that happened, we had, my partner and I, my then partner and I, had a whole load of nighttime visitations by something that made a noise under the bed, and I thought we had a mouse or a rat. My ex-partner went under the bed when we heard this one night, screamed his head off. He wasn't the kind of man to be prone to flights of fancy at all. He said there was something black, like a crab, under the bed. And he said it just shot past him. He was terrified. We both went under the bed at that point and with a torch, and nothing was there. Then the following night, my youngest son saw it in his room. My eldest son, who was young at the time, saw it in his room, and we...
what did he see?
He saw a similar thing. He described it as being like a black hand moving around on its own. So it sounds very similar to what you saw, and that was about a week or so before I had this hugely dramatic experience. which did feel like a complete altering of my reality, I must admit.
Reality.
It was a reality.
I call it fluidic reality.
Well, it was the most bizarre thing. I was actually in the grounds of the place where my very well-researched past life had lived, and I didn't realise it was my past life at the time at all. I had no inkling whatsoever. I wasn't interested in past lives in the slightest. But I took a step, and as I took this step, I heard this God Almighty clunking noise, and it sounded like a big vault being opened. It sort of went shoom like that, like a massive vault being opened, metallic. It went clockwise. The sound went clockwise around me, and it went shoom like that, like a kind of big metal seal opening. And simultaneously as this happened, there was a ripple of light that went all the way around the trees and made everything look really fluid. And it also felt at exactly the same time that my spirit had literally flipped around in my body. And
I call it fluidic reality.
I don't know what the heck
it is. A fluidic space.
But anyway, I looked at my partner and said, "Did you hear anything?" He's like, "No." I was like, "Okay." I'm feeling very, very scared by it, because it's about one of the only times that I've ever had something that no one else heard or could see. Because, when I've seen UFOs, there's been other people there, and even when I had the strange channeling, that it corresponded with a lot of what Barry King said. So I've always been able to verify the things that I've had. I couldn't verify that at all. That was completely something that I had no understanding or comprehension of. And it was after that happened, a couple of days after that happened, that I had this signal going into my ear. And it basically...
What was it like?
It sounded like white noise, going into... And it literally went into my ear.
Sometimes when you pick up the telephone and you listen to your computer...
Yeah, it did sound like a modem kind of thing, like an old-fashioned...
Like
yeah. So I don't know why they take that, but of course James Casbolt has alleged that there's that I'm involved in one of these programs at Brecon Beacons, and I would like clarification on that, really.
Okay, you're talking to James Casbolt or Michael Prince. What exactly do you want to say to him or about that program?
I don't know anything about it. I mean, I honestly don't know anything about it. I know that Brecon Beacons is a military facility. It's SAS training and things like that, but that James has gone, or Michael Prince has elaborated more recently, and he is alleging that there's a lot of SS stuff going on, and I don't know if that's a part of it. I'd be very interested to talk to him about that. I really would, because I want to get things straight in my mind about the SS, about what's going on, what potentially started back in the Third Reich, and what potentially is still happening now. So that's something I would be very interested to talk to him about. But he has alleged that there is a clone of me. And he said on one of these forums, and I can't remember which one it was.
Avalon,
probably. Yes, I think it was.
Camelot.
Yeah, it was Avalon, I think. And he said that it's this clone of me is called Proax something with numbers after it.
What numbers?
Didn't say. But the post is up.
Proax,
Pro-AX. And I honestly don't know. I mean, all I can say is that when I had that whole thing going on, I wrote that Vanity published fact-based fiction about the Greys, that in the dreams I was getting, I was having very high-level conversations with what appeared to be high-ranking military personnel.
Of what ilk? US?
Yes, American. Yes, they weren't British.
Where were you having these conversations?
In some kind of base. I mean, but these were dreams. I'm going to make that distinction. I don't know if this is real or whether it happened.
Right.
But the dream. I mean, the last dream I had was it was almost like a massive debriefing between me and these generals, and I was being treated on their level in this dream. This is what's so strange.
Any location? When
No,
was this recently?
God no. This is going back to before I spoke to Barry King.
Jesus, you're going back 92 then?
90, middle 94. It was around about summer 94, September I think it was.
Do you have anything you want to say to Barry then? Just to round this off.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's I'd love to catch up with him actually. I'd be very interested. So how is he?
A bit ill. We were meant to talk to him yesterday, but he wasn't able to do that.
Well, give him my very best wishes, and obviously apologies for the fact that I did get quite excited in that early video. I mean, it was so excited. I suppose what was really...
There's an awful lot in that video which is even more important now. But
I
when I was talking to Barry on Skype the other day, he was saying that he put more information into the documents, and people need to look at the documents that he was released. And that's why the documents are available on Basis 2 Take 2. If you put the disc 1 into the computer and don't look at it as a DVD but look at it as an ordinary data disc, there's the entire scan of the voice.
Yeah, I've still got all my hard copies of the voice, and there is a lot of information in that.
He's saying that he got more information out that he wasn't allowed to within the voice.
Okay.
That's the last thing he said to me the other day.
But I mean, certainly...
And that's the first time I've spoken to him since 2001.
Yeah. Well, certainly from my point of view, as somebody who experienced phenomena that I couldn't explain, meeting Barry, which is again why I was enthusiastic, meeting Barry was, amazing, because it was like, whoa, this is like, oh my God, this man is kind of coming from a completely different place to me. He hasn't had all the dreams and the psychic stuff, but he's kind of confirming what I've been led to believe. And I suppose that, in a way, you do get a bit sort of, oh my God.
Well, it is, isn't it?
It is. It's a very big thing. It's a very big deal. And I was young, and I do sort of, think that perhaps I got a bit over enthusiastic about it.
And there's a machine in there, and they start seeing projected, reactivated dead German soldiers.
Right.
And they reanimate.
Wow.
And they also reanimate and come out of existence. They just suddenly just appear. And their task is to protect the outpost.
Well, that sounds very similar to what Ron Adams suggested was at Copt Hall.
Copt Hall, yes.
Yes, that we went to.
Now,
and he mentioned this thing like a vending machine. He mentioned that there was a machine that was like it looked like a vending machine, but it effectively, did, make kind of reanimated.
No, we never got that.
Well, he said that it triggered stuff off, and then all of a sudden military people would turn up. That's what I remember him saying. I mean, I might have got part of that.
Can you get any more in there? Because this is very important.
All I remember when we went there, we obviously saw...
My camera started failing at the end.
I know it did. But he said that there'd been this rumour of this machine that was like a vending machine that had been seen there, or that people had known to existed there, that it was involved with some kind of secret project, and that whenever this thing was there, if you went there, basically military people would turn up. Now, I remember when we went there,
turn up?
Just arrive out of nowhere and see you off, get rid of you. Yeah.
Which happened?
Which happened to us.
Yes.
It did happen to us.
Yes.
We were seen off in no uncertain terms. Somebody turned up. Nobody was around, but somebody turned up in a Land Rover, if I remember rightly.
I don't know about that.
I think it was a Land Rover. It was something. It wasn't a military vehicle, but it was a sort of, it could have been sort of. It looked a bit paramilitary to me. The whole thing about the guy looked paramilitary to me.
Yeah, well, he definitely was military. Yeah, definitely had.
He had links to that, and he just turned up out of thin air when we were there filming, and got very interested in why we were there.
And that's when Ron was actually quite a decent. He looked healthy and.
Ron. It wasn't very long before he died. Actually.
So what happened about the story about Ron?
What an earring? His earring he's wearing is a skull with a little snake, a skull on the top of a snake. Most interesting, odd symbol, for an earring.
In what respect?
Well, definitely sort of occult leanings or whatever. Esoteric, for want of a better word.
You're not there.
Military style. Well, it's very interesting, wasn't it? Yeah.
I had to ask him if he's military.
No, but I wouldn't.
He's dressed in military clothes.
He's got military clothes on, I think.
We interviewed Ron. And we did the scalar wave thing, then went off to Rendlesham, I think that day, and he died.
He died. He rang me up, actually, a couple of weeks before he died. He was getting very, very paranoid, very frightened.
What happened to Ron?
What happened to Ron?
What do you know about his history with Rendlesham?
I don't know very much about his history with Rendlesham because we never talked about that. We talked about the Third Reich, which he was extremely involved with in terms of his own research. But he phoned me up and he got really frightened. And he said, look, he said, something's going to happen to me. He said, they're coming more and more, meaning greys, because that's what he was having, experiences with. He said, something's going to happen to me. Now, his wife had said that he was getting to the point where he actually wanted to turn his study into a Faraday cage. He wanted to put chicken wire all the way around it because he felt that was the only way that they couldn't get at him. Now, she was very worried about him.
He's an esoteric specialist.
Yes, he was.
So he would have known of all forms of protection and
yes, he would.
Crystals and salts and all sorts of other kinds of things.
He was a true occultist.
And he was then reduced to the stage of using chicken wire to protect himself.
He was that frightened. Something was frightening him, or something was making him paranoid. He didn't seem paranoid to me when I spoke to him. His wife felt that he was. But obviously she was with him all the time. Well, that's the impression she gave me. But that was the implication, that he felt that something was out to get him. He said, that's it, they're going to get me. Now, he had mentioned that he thought he had an implant. And of course I tried to calm him down by saying, no, they won't, because what else can you say, when you've got somebody really upset on the phone, somebody you really care about too, because I did,
over what period of time did this happen?
This happened 2 weeks before he died, approximately 2 weeks before he died. And
which would have been a week or so after I did the interview?
Yeah, it was exactly. It was within weeks that all this happened. And that was it. The next thing I knew, you rang me and said, Ron's dead. And I was absolutely flabbergasted by that. I was I felt also like I failed him, because obviously I was, I didn't really believe that he was in as much risk as he felt he was. But I didn't know about the Bentwaters thing.
The Adams family is a family I met around about 1994, and they were the only civilian family to have lived in US Air Force Bentwaters from 1970 to 1976. They were surrounded by military personnel and were very friendly with all of the military personnel. They would go on all the dances, go to all the Christmas parties, birthday parties of children, all the see the New Year in, So from 1970 to 1976, they left in 1976, and Ron started running a bookshop in Highbury in London. The shop's just a kind of supernatural orientation type of bookshop in Highbury, and Ron kept it going. But I would think that the most important thing about the whole family is that Ron, his wife, his 2 sons and a daughter-in-law all believed that while during any stay at US Air Force Bentwaters, they were abducted by aliens. The whole family, the whole lot. I talked to the wife, I talked to Ron the father, I talked to one of the sons, and the son indeed, whose name I can't remember, was very traumatized and had an instantaneous terror of spiders. I think it was the younger of the 2 sons. He was the only one that I met when I was at Ron's in Chase Road in 1984. But he was very traumatized looking. In my opinion, he had a sudden fear of spiders, as I said, after abduction, which is like another abductee in Edinburgh that I've met. Saw a UFO in the sky, all of a sudden whole life he's had an absolute terror of spiders. So to get on to the family living away from US Air Force Bentwaters from 1976 to 1980, they carried on their connection with US Air Force Bentwaters personnel socially, so they carried on going to all the birthday parties and all that. So I would say it's also interesting that the daughter-in-law, to obviously betrothed to one of Ron Adams' sons, coming from a completely different family, also stated that she thought she'd had incredible experiences whilst staying overnight in US Air Force Bentwaters. She believed that aliens had come through the walls and ran round her bed. And that was very similar to what Ron Adams' wife was talking about, whom I did speak to personally. But I don't really see why 2 completely separate families should be wanting to claim the same thing, which is utterly fantastic to us then, right now, even in 2010, sounds too unbelievable, too difficult to believe. Oh, Ron certainly was being abducted a hell of a lot, and it worried him enough to try to put the Greys off abducting him by smoking a lot. He would say to me that he was smoking just simply to put the Greys off, to pollute his blood deliberately and make his blood useless to the Greys. So he definitely had this picture, which I'd been told about a couple of years before by another source who was MI5 connected, and Ron was smoking pretty badly and dangerously, just simply in terror of being abducted by the Greys. So we're a little bit suspicious that Ron's death at the age of 65, while recorded as being of a heart attack, does relate to his being abducted by the aliens. Not beyond the kind of conversations we'd all had together, because when we met privately to do the newsletter, we always ended up talking about the SS. It was bizarre. We would talk about everything from the ovens at Auschwitz to the sort of the Haunibu, which, obviously we knew that they had flying discs. Yeah, we didn't mention Bell. That didn't come up at all. But I mean, it was like, yes, we both believed the Nazis had these machines, and that these Foo Fighters were connected and things like that. And theories about the Tibetans and about how when the Allies stormed Berlin.
That's the Hathor.
Well, apparently, I don't know. I mean, again, I don't know. But I mean, Madame Blavatsky went out to Tibet. I know that, and we talked a lot about Madame Blavatsky, and we talked a lot about Theosophy, and the rumour that they found Tibetan soldiers dressed in SS uniforms in Berlin. And again, this is kind of flaky stuff. You can't really verify a lot of it, But it is an interesting thing, and we did used to spend quite a long time talking about stuff like that. And was it true? We sort of both felt that it probably was, and we both felt that there was a hell of a lot more than meets the eye about the whole SS situation, and that it all goes back there. It always felt like it all went back to the SS. It really did. But I think he did imply to me that he because he was obviously a lot older than me, and I think he was born in the late 40s. So it's possible he could have been a reincarnated person from that era. It is possible, whether or not I'm sure he mentioned something like that once, but I can't be certain. But I know that
he's come back into our consciousness and our topic of conversation now in the same way that some other people.
Well, he's come back to me very much because obviously since more and more stuff has come to me about this SS stuff, Nazis here, but definitely a lot of what is going on now in terms of secret agendas, not so secret agendas, initiatives to depopulate potentially, like Codex Alimentaris and FEMA camps, fusion centres, a lot of the thing, weather engineering, a lot of that, I believe, goes back to the SS, and I think you could take it. All roads lead to Rome, and I think that you just got to go back to the SS. And we need to get more people who are prepared to speak about what they know, like Michael
this thing called fractured reality and
fractured reality is very, very interesting. I mean, I'm very interested in that because it did feel to me.
That's the term I came up with.
That's a good term because it did feel like that. It felt, when I was going through my experience, it felt like I was simultaneously living in between 3 or 4 different realities, and that whichever way I went, in terms of how I felt, was going to affect the wider implications for my life. I was basically choosing paths, and they would lead to different points. And so, that's kind of an interesting one.
Okay, any final words this time around?
No, the information speaks for itself.
Is there any sort of one summation phrase you want to get across? What's the bottom line? What's the essence?
It's a dangerous situation, but it's all under control. People shouldn't panic.
But should they read up things, look up things?
If they want to do their own research, that will help them.
And where's the best place to stay up to date with things?
Again, they can check out the Project IBIS information if they just Google James Casbolt IBIS. That's very detailed. There's a lot of data there.
And one of the things which I get is emails from a character, a very important person called the Reverend Anthony J. Pike.
Okay.
Anything you want to tell Mr. Pike, Lord Saint Pike?
Anything I want to tell?
Any message you want to say to Mr. Pike?
Why have you pulled his name out of everyone?
Well, he's disappeared off. He said his saintly duties on Earth had finished, and about 4 weeks ago, a couple of months ago, and he was off to a different planet. But he's come back. So I thought we'd send him a welcoming message on YouTube to say, Lord Saint Anthony.
Okay, say hello, Anthony. Saint Anthony. God bless. Jehovah bless. It's Jehovah, isn't it?
Yeah. Cosmic research.
The chairman, Jehovah.
Yeah. He keeps the world informed.
Yeah. He's good. He's good. He's got a good sense of humour.
Yeah. And anything for Barry?
Barry, yeah.
We've seen Barry recently. We're a bit worried about Barry.
No, for Barry, no hard feelings. He did what he had to do.
He's a bit ill now, I gather. He's not.
Yeah. He's a bit ill, and I hope he gets better. And no hard feelings. I know who he is. And he did what he had to do.
Okay, good luck. God bless.
Okay.
Let's see Mr. Hall.
Thanks, Miles.